Well, good morning, everyone. I hope that shocked you into awakeness. So I apologize. Sometimes my voice is a little louder than I think it is. My wife keeps telling me it has to do with deafness coming on, but I'm not going to buy that. So I want to thank everyone for being here today and joining your energy with everyone else here in the room to lift the consciousness of this planet. My name is Greg, and I'll be your minister of the day. Our topic for today is honoring Mother Earth. I came over here yesterday afternoon to meditate in the temple, and I was still kind of in that zone as I went out to my vehicle and to drive home. And I said a little prayer to Divine Mother. I said, please help me with this subject tomorrow. Please help me. Let me know that I'm on the right track here. And I just passed Patty's house and was heading out to the Atascoso, and a doe came out with a baby fawn that must have been born the night before or that yesterday, and it was only about this big and stood about this high. And I stopped the car to try to get a picture of it, but I without hesitation, I just started to cry. It was just such a beautiful sight to see life being renewed and to know that Mother Nature's looking over all of this. So for those of you that haven't been awakened by television or radio in the last few days, it was Earth Day on Friday. It was the 52nd year of Earth Day. And some of you may know that it started in the 1970s. We had a very large group of young people in this country that were already activated about stopping wars. And we were seeing some things happening with the environment. In 1961, a biologist by the name of Rachel Carson wrote a book called Silent Spring, where she detailed the damage that DDT was doing to nature, to the soils, to the plants, to the animals, and to human health and safety. And it took another 10 years, but that book was the catalyst for starting Earth Day. And we had all these young people who were already motivated to protest and do all the things they were doing with the Vietnam War. They just walked right into Earth Day. And it became a very popular thing that's done in countries all over the world now. In fact, the year that it started, the U.S. Congress passed the Clean Water Act. The year after, they passed the Clean Air Act. The government helped begin the cleanup of the damage that had been done to our environment. My mother, I used to say this with great glee when I was a teenager. My mother was a school teacher, but for a few years, she worked in the sewer. Okay, I know that sounds funny, but she worked in a sanitation district, which was brand new with all new equipment, all new ponds, everything else, because in 1965 and 1966, when she was working there, we were still dumping raw sewage into local waterways and partially treated sewage. I mean, we have come a long ways. Starting back in about the early 1800s, our Native Americans began to raise their voice about the damage that settlers and pioneers were doing to the environment. We were building fences. That was a no-no for the Indians. There was no property to Indians. Everything was their land. We started mining, particularly very intrusive strip mining, cutting down forests to build homes. And let's not forget the sport of getting a ride on a steam engine and sitting at the window with your rifle and shooting buffalo out the window for entertainment. That's where we were in the 1800s. Many of the Native American Indian chiefs spoke out about this. Sitting Bull spoke out, Red Cloud, Black Elk, White Elk, Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce, and Chief Seattle, who I'm going to read a quote from right now, spoke before the governor of the territory of Washington and said these words. He said, "Teach your children that the ground beneath their feet is the ashes of your grandfathers, so that they will respect the land. Tell your children that the earth is rich with the lives of our kin. Teach your children, as we have taught our children, that the earth is our mother. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons of the earth. If men spit on the ground, they spit on themselves. This we know. The earth does not belong to man. Man belongs to the earth. This we know. All things are connected like the blood that unites a single family. All things are connected. That was a voice in the wilderness in the 1850s. We live in a different world today than Chief Seattle lived in and those pioneers lived in those days. In fact, many people have gravitated toward the great cities of the world. This was a study that I read recently that in 1800, only 3% of the entire population of the United States lived in a city. We were all rural and agrarian. By 1950, it was 30% lived in the cities. They now estimate that by 2050, that 67% of Americans will live in major cities. It's already that way in Europe. 75% of Europeans live in major cities. 90% of the people in England live in cities. So why is that a problem? Well, let me tell you a story. And this story is about a school teacher. And she had taught for many years in an inner city school district, primary grades, grades 1, 2, and 3. And she was getting close to retirement, and she thought, I want to give back somehow from my educational experience. And she applied for a job on an Indian reservation to become a teacher there. And on the first day of school, she sat there with her Native American students, and she did what she always ever had done in the inner city. She asked them to draw a picture of themselves. And they drew pictures of themselves, and as she looked at the pictures, she began to weep. Because her urban children, who she had been teaching for years, when they drew a picture of themselves on an 8.5 by 11, it took up almost the entire sheet. It was all them. And it was a great artwork, and they followed their assignment. But when the Native American Indian children drew the picture of themselves, their picture was much smaller. But what was larger in the picture were the animals, the rocks, the trees, the sky, the birds. In other words, what she began to realize, and it made her sad, was that the Native American Indian children were completely connected with nature, and the urban children had no connection. They saw themselves as isolated. In fact, today, they're talking about in psychological journals about something called nature deficit syndrome, that children removed from nature and having experiences in wide open nature have behavioral problems. They have mental disorders. And when they put them in a natural setting, those behavioral changes happen immediately. And so there's not a lot of science behind it yet, but there's a lot of people using that term now. And I believe it's going to become more important in the future. You know, today, a lot of our children don't even know where their food comes from. I mean, it's ridiculous. Some of you know we have 5 children. Our youngest is Michael. And Michael came to live with us permanently at a very young age. I think he was about 3 or 4. And Elena was standing in the kitchen, and she was peeling a potato. And Michael came over to Elena and said, "What are you doing?" "What is that?" That's what he said. "What is that?" And she said, "This is a potato. You know, this is what you make mashed potatoes out of, scalloped potatoes, potato chips, French fries." And Michael said, "No, that's not how you do it." He only had experience from his birth mother, who was not, let's just say she wasn't Julia Childs. But he said, you go to the freezer, you pull out the bag, you pour all the French fries on a plate, you put it in the oven and cook it. And he didn't understand that to get to that plastic bag in the refrigerator, there had to be a potato first, and that potato grew in the ground. So the survey that I just looked at with children said that 25% of children don't know where butter comes from. 24% didn't know where cheese came from. 2/3 of all children thought that bacon came from a plant. I don't know about you guys, but I'm planting a bacon tree as soon as it comes out in my yard. But here's the shocking thing. They thought that most chicken nuggets and French fries came from animals. So, out of touch? Let's look at what we're doing with nature today. So, we're strip mining. And unfortunately, and I hope this doesn't fall on and hurt any ears in this room, but unfortunately, a lot of the things we're trying to do to conserve and keep from using hydrocarbons is producing more strip mining. Because to make batteries for electric cars, including the one that I drive, they need rare elements. And they're found in very small amounts in the world in countries that are not very friendly to us. And they have to strip mine for this to get enough quantity. Monocrop agriculture is still out there in a big way. People who grow the same crops on depleted soil year after year after year, and then feed you and tell you that this stuff is good. We're still using toxic insecticides and pesticides. We're still dependent on hydrocarbon fuels. We're destroying our world's forests by deforesting and harvesting forests without renewing them. We're polluting the oceans with plastic. The consumption of pharmaceuticals in this country and in Europe is actually destroying water supplies. Some of you don't know that, but if you check city water supplies in major cities like Los Angeles, you'll find there's a small percentage of estrogen, other hormones, blood pressure medications, because what leaves your body ends up in the groundwater, that ends up in our rainwater, that ends up in our water supply. So we're actually drugging ourselves unknowingly with water supplies. So we're poisoning the air, the water, the soil, as well as consuming resources that are not renewable. Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a book shortly before he passed about what we can do to save the planet. And I read this and I thought, someday I want to use this in a talk. And this is the talk. Our civilization is a civilization of borrowing. Whenever we want something we can't afford, like a house or a car, we count on our body and our labor in the future to pay back our debt. We borrow and borrow without knowing if we can ever pay it back. In this way, we borrowed from ourselves, we've borrowed from our health, from our planet, but the planet can't take this anymore. And we've borrowed too much from you, our children and our grandchildren. The planet and future generations are also us. We are not separate. The planet is us. And you are also us. The truth is, there's not much of us left. That was a warning from Thich Nhat Hanh about our earth and how we're treating it. So who and what is Mother Earth, Mother Nature? I was reading about this concept, and the concept is common in almost all major civilizations in the world, that there is a feminine divinity that watches over all of nature. I don't know when I learned this. I think I've always known this. But most of us heard it the first time when Fleischmann's margarine commercial came out, and that lady said, "It's not nice to fool Mother Nature." And that has become something that Americans now embrace, the idea of Mother Nature. Norm Paulsen, the founder of Sunburst, through direct experience and revelation, gave us a boatload of information about the creation. And this is what he taught, that the Spirit of God dwelt in the smallest of all places, in ever new joy and bliss. That Spirit awoke and desired to see images moving in the field of power. that thoughts are energies. That should sound familiar, those of you that listen to Law of Attraction. But thoughts are energies, and as Spirit had this thought, the energies moved outward in different ways. One form of energy moved in a counterclockwise, one moved in a clockwise portion. We call one the masculine divine, and the other we call the feminine divine. They created stars, a male and a female and a masculine star, and those stars began to be attracted to each other. And as we see in astronomy, most of the time when stars are attracted to each other, they hit each other and explode, and then they're gone. These stars, because the energy was rotating in opposing directions, they were able to meld together into a single unit and expand. And that expansion produced light. That's what we read about in the Old Testament when it says, "Let there be light," and there was light. And that light went forward into the empty space and began to carve out our universe, forming planets, stars. I guess I can say suns, which are nothing but stars, animals, rocks, plants, people, all those things. We call this single star that coalesced from a masculine and feminine star, we call it the Great Central Sun. And from that sun, right now as we sit here, that spirit is holding together the entire universe. And part of that is the divine feminine. That aspect of God that is the nurturing part of God, the upholding part of God, the supporting part of God. That feminine energy upholds everything in this universe. Why did I say a little prayer to Divine Mother yesterday? Because Yogananda said the mother is always closer than the father. I wanted instant gratification. I wanted an answer to my prayer, so I prayed to the closest one. So Yogananda explained how Divine Father and Divine Mother work together. And let me share that with you as soon as I can get my fingers to open this page. Okay. Yogananda said this: pure reason or wisdom is the father aspect of God. All nature that we behold is the mother aspect of God, because in nature we find beauty, gentleness, and kindness. The flowers, the birds, the beauties of all nature all speak to the mother aspect of God, the creative motherly instinct of God. When we look at all the good things in nature, we feel tenderness rise within us, and we can see and feel God in nature. That reminds me of that experience that our founder Norm had with Yogananda out in the desert during the last few months of Yogananda's life, where they walked around the home out in Palm Desert, where they had just built a fence to keep the snakes out, and they were walking under the moonlight, and even Norm could feel that there was just a vibration. There was an aliveness in all of nature as they were walking outside. And Yogananda told him in a telepathic way, without saying any words, "That's Divine Mother. She's here with us right now." And she's with us right now, here in this room. She's always with us. Let's prepare to go into meditation and contemplate this actual idea and our relationship to our planet. And when we come back, I'll have a few things to say about what we can do to actually honor Mother Earth. So sit up straight where you are. Get your feet flat on the floor if it's possible. Try not to touch your back to the back of the chair. Close your eyes and begin, nice and easy, to begin to take some breaths in. Hold it, then let them out. And then hold it for a moment and let it back in. And we'll have Patty lead us with the bowls into our meditation time. You and I are made of stardust, of light. The matter that makes up our body, the source of that is the light from the great central sun. That same light has created everything around us, all of nature. That's why we're connected to everything. We're all the same substance. We're all in this together. Us, the plants, the animals. As I meditated about how we could actually honor Mother Earth, I came up with 12 things that we could do. And I'm sure that if we all sat down together, we could come up with another 12. The number one would be to spend time in nature. You can't understand Mother Nature without being in nature. Take off your shoes. Walk on the dirt. Walk on the sand. Walk in the ocean water along the beach. Number two, this is a no-brainer, compost. I was shocked to find out that 28% of what still goes into our landfills is compostable, that people are not doing composting. And composting is a great way to reinvigorate the soils of your garden, so it's pretty much a no-brainer. Number three, another no-brainer, recycle. All the plastic, the paper and cardboard that we can possibly recycle. I don't know if you've paid attention, but I was in New Frontiers the other day and we were looking at paper products. And quite a few of the paper products in there are from either 100% recycled materials or a very high percentage of recycled materials. That's the future. If we don't have to keep cutting down trees to make paper, that's an awesome gift to give to Mother Earth. Choose food at markets that is grown locally and organic. The subtext or that is, don't buy conventional farmed foods. Don't support conventional farming, support organic farming. It's healthier for you and it's healthier for the planet. Number five, don't poison the earth. We've learned from mercury, dioxin, and DDT that many toxic chemicals do not break down, but they pollute the earth, affecting the soil biome, our waterways, the oceans, and the health of our plants, animals, and even us humans. 6, plant your own garden. Build a greenhouse. Grow flowers to support the pollinators in your neighborhood. Number 7, adopt a rescued animal. There's lots of animals that Divine Mother would like to see in a family. And those of you that have had pets know how much love and peace that pets can bring in your life. Plant a tree or several of them. I remember when we first moved out onto the Atascoso, we were gifted these oak trees that were about this big in a bucket. And we planted them all. And yesterday I was looking at them and realized some of those are almost twice as tall as I am now. And they've only been in the ground for 5 years. 9, find something to repurpose or upcycle around your home. A very common thing if you're a gardener is all your cardboard. When you have unwaxed, uncolored cardboard, it makes a great thing to add to your soil and put soil over it and let it break down in the soil. Old carpets work better than weed killers. They keep the weeds from coming up in the pathways in your gardens. Number 10, take a gardening class. Take a permaculture course. Take a hunter safety course. Something that gets you close to nature and gives you some tools to actually honor the earth. Number 11, support Earth Day events, and financially support healthy environmental organizations. And number 12, I left to the very last because I believe in my mind it's the most important. Meditate in nature. I told a story a few years ago. I'm not going to retell it, but I can, what's the right word? I can testify to the fact that when we meditate in nature, things change. And my experience was that the rock that I was sitting on while I was meditating was no longer just a rock, it was my friend. The tree next to me was talking to me. The large mammals that were in front of me that hadn't been there when I started meditating were communicating with me telepathically. We are connected to everything. And meditation brings us into that connection in a very physical and very strong way. Norm said this about meditating in nature. So I'm going to leave this with you today. Allow your heart to commune with God in nature. Find a pristine environment that makes your heart swell with joy and love. Embrace the solitude. Before I read the rest of that, I was thinking about that part of his quote the other day, embrace the solitude. One of the reasons why I think that it's easier to meditate in nature is there's no distractions. When you're meditating in an urban setting, there's car horns and traffic noises and police sirens and airplanes and you name it. There's all kinds of distractions. TVs. Unfortunately, the refrigerator is usually only about 50 feet away from you. It's really hard to meditate it takes great willpower to meditate in an urban setting. However, you can do it, but it's way easier in nature. Norm goes on. The pure self within you will come forward through your senses to commune with you in nature. In other words, that thing we're seeking, self-realization, getting to know our true self, as Norm referred to it, is enhanced when we meditate in nature. Please join me in several ohms. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, we are thankful for these bodies, for this planet that provides for all of our needs. Bless this earth, that we may know how we can heal the planet. Amen.
let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you.
Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you.
Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you.
Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you.
Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you.
Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Lord, let me walk with you, talk with you, be with you, show you the love that I've always held for you. Oh, my Lord, I feel you everywhere. Take my life.